Equality and democracy are under assault, but there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. I believe we're in a battle for the soul of this nation.
Joe Biden, flanked by 2 United States Marines, shouted at MAGA Republicans for 24 minutes in one of the most divisive campaign speeches, and it was, in recent memory. But what right does he have to preach about the soul of America? Here to weigh in, we have legal immigrant to the U.S., Mike Diaz, along with Iowa farmer Jim Boyer, as well as former police officer Tre Pennie. Gentlemen, all, thank you so much for being here. Mike, let me start with you. There were over almost 20 mentions of Republicans and MAGA Republicans, yet not a single mention of immigration or our border, Mike.
Well, that's what you do when you have nothing to tell the American people what you've accomplished. You got to point the finger, and he did. He did it well. If I was part of his handlers, that's exactly what I would have told the president to do. You got nothing to talk about. Let's go ahead and just point the fingers. But you know what? There was some stuff that he did talk about. You know, there was, I think that was like 25 minutes, and 20 of that he spent hammering the Republicans and conservatives. But there were some things that I saw in his speech that really kind of were troubling, and some of those are like, I'm going to quote him here. It's like, it's my duty to level with you and tell you the truth, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful. And so there wasn't even a mention of Hunter Biden, right? I mean, you think, how painful would that be for somebody to tell the American people of what kind of sins his son is doing as relates to his dealings with some of these foreign countries, right? And so I couldn't believe he said that. The other thing he said that was really, I think, quite telling was, he said that Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. And he said that this is a nation that honors the Constitution, and we do not reject it. But that's the same president that also said that these same constitutional rights are not absolute. So, gosh, I can't believe it. And lastly, I finished with this. I know we don't have that much time, but he also talked about how he wanted to make a nation of hope and unity and optimism, not a nation of fear, division, and darkness.
Yeah, we jumped the shark on that one.
87,000 new IRS agents. It's frightening, some of the things that he said.
Absolutely. Trey, as was just mentioned by Mike, he talked about safety and security and law enforcement, or alluded to it, yet he's been on one side of that ledger too.
Absolutely. Look, I think President Biden stole the soul of America with that speech. It's truly unfortunate that he took that route. I mean, look, I've been a police officer for 22 years in Dallas, Texas. I was a U.S. Army veteran. And to see the optics in that speech and to actually hear everything that he said, I was offended. And let me tell you, look, I am a Republican. I was one of the 74 million Republicans that voted for President Trump. And I believe in his MAGA agenda, make America great again. I want to see our police officers safer. I want to see our communities safer. I want to see the bridge created between the police and our minority communities across this country. But that's exactly the opposite of what President Biden has done. In fact, he's promoted the defund the police agenda, which has allowed individuals to attack our police officers across the country. So he is no advocate at all for law enforcement. And I think we as Americans need to come together to say this is not the type of leadership that we want in this country. We want to be able to bring Americans together on the idea that we can all be equal and treated equally and have safe communities to live in for our kids. So I want to make sure that we are saying the right thing when we talk about this. President Biden is no friend to the American people, especially the people living in the inner cities dealing with violence and crime every day.
Jim, Trey mentioned the inner city. You're in Iowa, a farmer. Was he uniting you? Was he reaching out to you, or was he indicting you?
No, not at all. I mean, this was it was an angry speech. I can liken it most to an angry old man yelling at kids to get off his lawn. I mean, there was 25 minutes to a half hour of my life and the life of American people that we will never get back. This was a waste of time. The speech was billed as or advertised as an address to the nation. And this was a half hour of fear mongering, which the Democrats are very good at, to gin up their base in order to sway the American voters in the upcoming midterm elections. Not once did we hear anything about the promises that he made this nation some 20 months ago when they first came into power, about addressing some of the issues that are facing Americans. I mean, imagine those people in California right now that are deciding if they're going to cook dinner for their children or going to plug in their electric car.
No, you're right.
In rural Iowa.
Go ahead, finish up real quick.
Yeah, here in rural Iowa, we're still facing some of those problems that we were facing 20 months ago.
Absolutely.
It's the energy cost. It's the supply chain issues.
It's inflation, it's security, it's the border, none of which he mentioned in that speech at all. Instead, he put a target on his political opponent's back. Mike Diaz, Jim Boyer, Tre Pennie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you for having me.